What's going on, YouTube people? So today I'm going to show you guys how to replace a fuel pump on a 5 horsepower Mercury 4-stroke outboard. This process may be the same for your 4 horsepower and your 6 horsepower. They're pretty similar, besides small parts here and there that are interchangeable, but I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. The reason why I wanted to change it is because I'm noticing some loud noise coming from the fuel pump even though the motor starts. So I'm going to do it before and after to see if that helps with the loud noise that I'm hearing. Take a look here at the current fuel pump that's on there. And then I'm going to be replacing it with this brand new one right here. Both of them are Mercury, aka Tohatsu fuel pumps. They're exactly the same part number. So I'm going to be swapping those out. So I'm going to go ahead and do a decibel reading test with the cowl off as it sits with the old fuel pump on to see what the decibel reading is, and then once I replace it, I will go ahead and do a decibel test again to see if we had any improvement in sound from swapping out the fuel pump. Alright, so here's my decibel gauge. I bought this a long time ago. Got a pretty loud car, so I always wondered what the decibel reading was on it. Never got a chance to use it. Today is the first time. It looks pretty brand new. Go ahead and turn it on. Right now we're getting, finally, with my neighbor's AC turning off and the wind blowing, about 50 to 60 decibels. So I'm going to go ahead and start the motor, see what we're reading at. There we go. So, I don't know if you guys can see that was reading. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and swap the fuel pump now, see if that changes. Alright, here we go. So, for those of you who have never done anything mechanical before to engines, this is very simple to do. It's a mechanical fuel pump, it's not electric, so there's no wires running to it. It's all driven by the actual motor. And the easiest way to do it, first you just take these 2 clamps and slide them back, which this clamp actually, and I'll show you where it was in position. I cannot. Oh, there we go. It was stuck. Alright. So basically this clamp was right here. So all you need to do is get your needle nose pliers, slide it back. This particular clamp was down lower, and you just need to slide that one up, which I've already done. And with your needle nose pliers, because with the heat, sometimes the rubber hose kind of binds to the outlet and inlet on the fuel pump. So you just grab it and you just squeeze and do a little rotation like this to loosen it. Same thing for this one. And once you do that, you should be able to just pull it off as so. I'll keep this one in the vertical position, so I'll stick it right there. And this one, I'll try and keep it up also, so it doesn't leak all the fuel out of the fuel filter. Alright, I really don't have a good way of keeping it stood up, but it looks like it'll be fine. Alright, then you get your Phillips screwdriver, and there's only 2 screws for this, right? So you just go ahead and unscrew this screw here. Alright, and you do this one. And once you do that, this guy should just pull right off. Boom. And as you can see, here is the old one, here is the new one. They look exactly the same. Obviously the old one has oil around it because it sits within the engine block. So here's the new one. If you want to take a look inside the engine block, I don't know, I'm sorry, actually I think this is the head because there's a camshaft. So it sits in front of a camshaft right there. But if you want to look inside there, I don't know if you guys can see that. Let's see if you guys can. Let's see if I can get you a close up. But there is the camshaft for the outboard. All right. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to first clean the outside right here just to make sure the surface is clean. All right. Then what you also want to do, as you can notice, this guy comes with the gasket. You want to make sure you take the gasket off your old fuel pump and you slide that gasket on your new one if you didn't buy a new gasket. Me, I did not buy a new gasket. If you feel like you need a new gasket, you could probably go to like your local hardware store where they sell a bunch of nuts and bolts, and they probably have these O-rings, because I've seen them here in Houston. We have something called Ace Hardware, and they do sell those there. But all you do is you put your gasket on, and then you go ahead and you push this guy back in. That's all we have to do. And then so now, once you have that in there, you go ahead and put your screws back in to line it up. Man, it is super windy today. Okay. And you want to try to put these in kind of evenly. You don't want to fully tighten one side. You want to kind of do them together at the same time, kind of like how you put on the tire. That way they can both slide in kind of at the same time. And then once you get them on to where, if you notice, the surfaces are flush against each other. I don't know if you guys can see that, but once the surfaces are flush between the fuel pump and the engine, you go ahead and you can tighten them down. All right, so we are secure here. Now we're going to go ahead and put our lines back on. First, you go ahead and put your output line back on, which is out to the actual carburetor or to the engine, and then you just use your needle nose pliers to slide the clamp down. All right, and I did not replace the fuel filter because the fuel filter is new, so I didn't have to replace that. Normally I would have, though. And then the other thing is, oh man, I messed up on that. I almost bust myself in the face. But the other thing, you go ahead and put your other line back on your inlet to the fuel pump. All right, and once you have it all the way on, you go ahead and take your needle nose and you just slide it over the barb area under the hose, and that's it. It's back on and it's ready to go. So sometimes you guys have to remember that when you take the fuel out of the entire fueling system, like to give you an example, if you take your carb off and you clean it, you take your fuel filter off and you put a new one on, and then you also take your hoses off and there's no fuel within the hose assembly coming from the fuel tank, your engine may not start until you kind of have something that ignites the spark plug. And what I mean by that, I don't know if you've ever seen some of the older motors where you had to spray some carb substance in there in order for it to start first, and then once it started, the fuel circulated. Well, it's kind of similar to that, where you have to kind of get some fueling in here in order for it to start. The way I normally do that is I open this hole up right here and I get some fuel squirted in there using either like a what do they call it? Kind of like a turkey baster. You can use one of those or something similar to that, where you can just put it in there and squeeze fuel into it and then close it off, and then that should get your motor fired up, and then that would start getting the fueling going. Because what happens is, at least for me, when I flipped my Solo Skiff over, as well as the outboard, there was no fuel within the system, even though there was fuel inside the tank. And because of that, it creates like air, and so it won't let your motor start if you have air within your fuel system. Just an FYI there, but we're gonna go ahead and get this bad boy cranked up, see if we get it working. All right, looks like it did drop it down a little bit. Yeah. So it did drop it down some. All right. All right, so I think that job is done. As you can see, it looked like it did drop it down some decibels. Not quite sure if it was really that effective, but from the decibel meter, it does show it was effective. So that's all for this particular episode. Thanks for watching, and until next time.